The clock is ticking for NBA teams to get extensions done on their rookie scale deals. So why are so many teams not willing to put a contract out there for their guys? We're talking about quality players, guys like Jaden Ivey, Jalen Durant. We've got players like Walker Kessler. Why are all these guys still sitting out there not getting deals done? The deadline coming up on Monday to sign extensions. We'll get into that, plus a trade still in the works. Sacramento looking to clear roster spots. We'll look at that as well. I'm Trevor Lade. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, I think we are definitely seeing a shift in the way NBA teams behave, and there's a number of players right now that are feeling the sting from that.
Yeah, I may have still ultimately been the case, but I really think that this offseason proved to be a blueprint for a lot of other teams and how they're going to manage this, especially going forward. But there are still so many players that are, like we were mentioning, extension eligible that just are not going to be able to get those.
Yeah, so here's a piece by Jay Fisher. We'll start here on the Substack that he shares with Mark Stein. Russell Westbrook and Sacramento Kings, we do have a trade potentially in the works. Russell Westbrook is a Sacramento King. However, the Kings were long rumored to be trying to move a guard before they signed Russell Westbrook. They didn't get that done. That does not mean they're not going to try and trade a guard, though. Most likely what we're going to see them do is waive Terrence Davis to get down to 15 contracts on the roster and continue to work to trade Devin Carter, the former 13th pick in the 2024 draft. Is this what you should be doing if you're Sacramento, moving Devin Carter in order to open up space for Russell Westbrook?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
I just, if you didn't see the last video, then I don't, I'm just trying to go off that. In all seriousness, no, I would not like to move off of a young player that we just drafted, like a year ago. At this point and try to bring in Russ when you already have guys like Schroeder there, Monk there. It's a bit redundant. Yeah. So I would personally not be trying to do that. But maybe Russ is a byproduct of it. He's clearly got some fans in Sacramento, but maybe they just have decided they're done with him. I mean, Carter, that's certainly possible too. And we've seen other teams give up on some of these younger guys like Buffkin and stuff like that too.
Yeah, fair point. We are seeing teams have a little bit less patience for players that maybe haven't performed up to expectations, even on rookie deals. That's not saving players from either getting waived or getting even salary dumped, as we saw in the case of Kobe Buffkin. But worth noting, that's
right. Yeah, JHS like a year later.
There was a little bit more to that because there was the incentive of the Luka trade that was there that he had to be a part of in order to make the math work. But it's a fair point, right? Like that, you've got these guys that are still on rookie. In the past, rookie scale deals meant, okay, this guy's going to be on the team for the next 4 years, even if he's not very good. Very rare for a team not to pick up a cheap contract. Now teams are so careful, and this is going to bleed into here this conversation about these extensions that teams are saying, nope, no thank you to. Teams are so much more careful now under this collective bargaining agreement with their money that they're oftentimes not willing to allow a player to stay on the roster, even if they are on a rookie scale contract. They're just moving on from them even faster. All right, let's get into some of these extensions. We'll get to that in 30 seconds.
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using code Bulletin. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
And again, use that code Bulletin right now. Great promo over at Sleeper. Free $20 entry. No deposit needed. Use the link in the description down below. Sleeper, great presenting sponsor for the channel. All right, let's get into this, Donnie. Essentially, this is, and Jake Fisher did a great job writing about all these guys that are looking doubtful to get extensions done now. And it's part of the reason why people are surprised that Keegan Murray got a $140 million deal over 5 years with Sacramento, despite the fact that he's got a UCL injury, despite the fact that he's not going to be available for the start of the season. All of these things have left teams a bit shocked, because the other players right now that you could conceivably be extended includes Dyson Daniels, Jalen Durant, Jaden Ivey. These are all players that Fisher writes about. Christian Brown for the Nuggets. Shaedon Sharpe is the one guy that is projected to get an extension done. Walker Kessler, Mark Williams, all players that could be getting extensions right now, but looks unlikely that it's going to happen. And the reason is because teams are now relying upon restricted free agency to ultimately do the work for them. And all of those guys will hit restricted free agency next summer. So teams, rather than, as we've seen in the past, take care of their young players and say, yeah, you've been pretty good for us, let's hammer out an extension. Now they're saying, either give us a super team-friendly extension or you can deal with restricted free agency next summer. We know there's no threat of us losing you for nothing. So we're not going to do anything that might be anywhere close to a player-friendly deal right now. It's team-friendly, or you can hit restricted free agency next summer. Should teams be taking that hardline approach? Because I think this is a real shift here we're seeing around the league.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue whether or not they should or shouldn't. I think if they've got true confidence in these guys, they should be extending them at a number that I think they can agree on. But I think with where we are now with the rising salaries and stuff like that, I think that's where the problem lies, because players are looking at it like, oh, well, give me this max extension because XYZ, like a guy like Walker Kessler, maybe he's asking for something like that. Is that $40 million? Teams are not trying to give out those salaries so much anymore. They're not trying to give anything really above 25 unless it's a max salary, in which case you got to be careful about giving out too many of those, because you don't want to give out, more than maybe a couple max salaries, because you can't really build out your roster adequately. Like, there's a huge crunch that's happening all around, and these guys are another piece to this. But I think if it's a guy you truly have, long-term interest in, it's probably good to try to lock them up so they feel good about themselves. But completely for business, they're doing the right thing. I mean, if you can squeeze and get these guys on the ultimate team-friendly deal, monetarily or options, whatever, then they're doing the right thing.
Well, we've talked about this concept quite a bit, but it's effectively teams have to look at, can this guy be at least the second best player on a good team, or even the third best player? And if not, that's where it gets tough to get up to like 40 million, even 30 million. According to Fisher, teams are kind of setting a hard line at 25 million, which is what Josh Giddey got. It's part of the reason why, the extension that we saw for Keegan Murray was maybe a little bit surprising. But when we look around the NBA, Josh Giddey, the cap was 25 million on his extension. He got that 4-year, was at 100 million, I think. Shaedon Sharpe expected to get 4 years. The Blazers seem to have some urgency to lock him up on a long-term deal, but he would be 4 years, 100 million. Teams don't want to go north of that unless they feel like you are a true star level player. I think it is the guys that are in this. Your Jaden Ivey, can he be a really good player? Yes, he can be. He's hurt right now. He's going to miss the start of the season. Teams aren't willing to pay unless they know this guy can be a top tier player, a locked in starter, ideally maybe the second best player on a championship level team. And if you're not that, we're going to be really, really careful with the kind of money that we give out. It's just the way teams are behaving right now. That number's set at about 25 million. The teams don't want to go over, but it's putting these players in a squeeze. We saw it happen with Giddey, with Kuminga, with Cam Thomas, with Quentin Grimes, all of these guys who were left to fend for themselves in restricted free agency. And essentially, they are persona non grata around the NBA.
That's got to be one of the worst situations in the league to be a restriction free agent, because teams are not going to give you that much money. And then other teams don't want their money tied up, so they're not going to give you that offer sheet unless, and they can't really do, an insane offer sheet because that's just too much money tied up. So that's got to be the worst position to be in. And we're seeing that here. And we saw it this offseason. Like, it's not, I want to drive home. It's not just these free agents that are like rookie scale guys. It's everybody. Like, everybody. These guys that are going to want somewhere in that $20 to $30 million, you got to be really careful with that salary range, because you could easily get too many of those and not be able to add a max when it's time to add a max or whatever. Right.
And depth is even more important in today's NBA than ever. And so if you don't have that depth, you're in big trouble. And I think teams are more concerned about bad money on their books than we've ever seen them before. And so because of that, teams would rather risk a player hitting restricted free agency, knowing that other teams aren't going to bid on them, because this is all connected, than give them an extension that has the potential to be bad money. So the teams are so concerned about bad money on their books, That's part of why they won't give them the extensions right now. But it's also why they know they don't have to fear restricted free agency at all, because in order to get somebody in restricted free agency, if you are, for example, Walker Kessler, I've got him up on the screen with the Utah Jazz. If you're another team out there, whoever, let's say the Brooklyn Nets really want Walker Kessler, the only way they can get him is by giving him a contract that the Jazz feel is a negative value. And teams are so scared of negative value contracts right now, nobody's going to give them that. So restricted free agency isn't even really free agency anymore. What it has become is an exclusive negotiation between the incumbent team and the player, because no other team out there wants to risk having any kind of negative value money on their books. And if you gave a player a team-friendly deal and they sign it in restricted free agency, well, their incumbent team is just going to match. So no team's going to bother with that. Restricted free agency has devolved into exclusive negotiation with the player and their incumbent team. Teams know that, and they're taking advantage of it. And I can't say they're wrong. This is just the cap environment we're in, but it's not a fun place to be if you're a player.
Yeah, that was my point earlier. Is like, if, from a business standpoint, I can definitely understand why you would squeeze. And you may have a guy asking for X, Y, Z, but ultimately, if you just wait them out, you're going to come to a crossroads. Is that player going to take the qualifying offer, or are they going to sign what you are extending them, or what you are offering them as an extension? And if that offer is $20 million less than they want, maybe there's a team option on there. Maybe they're just ballsy enough to take that qualifying offer, but most guys aren't going to. And so if you know that ultimately the guy is going to be more willing to reach a number that's more team friendly, whether it's like a huge pay cut or something in the middle, like we saw with Giddey, they weren't that far apart, like 20 to 30, they reached in the middle, fine, right? But that's where you have that leverage if you're a team to squeeze these guys, because no one is going to touch them otherwise. So, and that's why the Warriors are also so careful this offseason, because they couldn't do anything in any other order, because if they did, then all of a sudden there's a number they can't match. And that's the only other scenario with this, is like, if they're not able to match a restricted offer, then maybe teams would be willing to extend that to a player. So that's where they're at.
And you've got Cam Thomas taking the qualifying offer. The players may push back by doing that. But look, if Jonathan Kuminga didn't take the qualifying offer to be on a Warriors team that he knows he's not a great fit for long-term, if he took the money, Cam Thomas, the Nets were offering him mid-level exception or below money.
They were so far apart.
That was the one where it made sense. And then Quentin Grimes with the qualifying offer as well. That's the one weapon that that players have against this scenario in restricted free agency, is the threat of the qualifying offer. But again, if you're giving anything reasonable, Jonathan Kuminga is the example. If you're giving anything reasonable in terms of money, the belief is that ultimately the players will take the money. With Cam Thomas and Quentin Grimes, there's questions about whether or not they're the long-term fit in either Brooklyn or in Philly, or is VJ Edgecombe going to take on that role? So there was reason for the teams not to want to commit long-term. Okay. But if there was belief that this guy is a long-term fit for your club, you can still try to squeeze the player and get a team-friendly deal. And that's what we're seeing play out. Christian Brown, even, the Nuggets are going to play that game with him, and they like him a lot. But
and he won a 35, I believe, the other day, 30 to 35, man.
And based on the way it's been in the past, and that's where we're in this transition period, right? Because in the past, that would just be, here you go. Here's your money.
The rookie scale guy coming up, that's normal. That's standard practice right there.
And now I think those players will look around saying, what happened?
I think also when it comes to that too, we're fixated on the salaries, but we also really need to fixate on RFA versus non-RFA, because you're going to see that and be like, we're going to be like, oh, well, why shouldn't he get that if like a guy like Reeves is going to get that? Well, because the difference is that there's no restricted free agency. Like, he's just a pure free agent. You don't know what happens in that situation.
That's a great point.
You can't leverage it. Like, it's not the same.
I guarantee you the Utah Jazz are coming to terms on a deal if Walker Kessler was hitting unrestricted free agency next summer.
Yeah, for sure. That's the most important thing here. Like, that is where all this comes from, is the fact that they are restricted and they can't do anything. These guys are just in a holding period until they come to terms with their basically with their regular team on a new deal, because like you said, it's an exclusive window because no one else is touching these guys, and that's kind of just what it is. But a guy like, you brought him up here, like Trae Young, who also didn't secure an extension, he is an exception to this standpoint, because you could argue whether or not he should get an extension at a max number, especially after De'Aaron Fox did this offseason. but the Jazz don't seem to want to extend him right now, despite the fact that they built this solid roster around him. And ultimately, we're going to see what this looks like for these guys like him. And if there's money out there, if he maybe is in a situation where he leaves, I think ultimately he still stays where he's at, but he's got a lot of leverage in this case that the team doesn't have.
Yeah, this is the one surprise that Trae Young with the Hawks is not right now getting an extension and is not going to do an extension. Atlanta not wanting to commit long-term, wants to see what this team looks like. I think if you're going to build a team around Trae Young, Atlanta has done about as good of a job as you can do to put the pieces around him that should fit. I think the Hawks should have a good season. They had one of the best summers in the NBA in terms of off-season moves. But no extension for Trae. So this is the one exception what we're talking about here, where Trae Young does have the threat of unrestricted free agency next summer because he has a player option, not restricted free agency coming, and yet the Hawks are still reluctant. And maybe that tells us where things really are around the NBA, right? If even the threat of losing Trae Young to unrestricted free agency is not enough to convince the Hawks to commit, it's a sign of how truly careful with future salaries teams are being.
Yeah, I think it's some of that, but I think the Hawks are also unique because they've got Johnson on one of those salaries we're saying is kind of taboo right now. They just extended him at 30 mil a year. Like they got him on one of those deals, but there was a report earlier this offseason that they kind of are interested in seeing what they have there. Maybe there's a world where they decide to pivot with him as the focal point and build around him instead. And maybe that's part of why they haven't fully committed to Trae yet as well. But they have their eyes, potentially on this other option that's there too. So they feel like maybe it just hypothetically anyway, they could feel like maybe they have more option here than just losing Trae or building around him indefinitely. So,
well, and he's got to get healthy. Jalen Johnson has to stay healthy, but maybe that's something that they do see over the course of the season, and then they go from there. Now, one other thing that I wanted to point out that was really interesting in Jake Fisher's piece today was about the Houston Rockets and the situation. And they love Tari Eason. They like to give him a new deal. They do have the threat of restricted free agency still there, but how much the Rockets pay Eason? The question is, can Tari Eason, who is a role player off the bench for that, very good though. I mean, any team could use a Tari Eason, no question. But can he crack $20 million in average annual value? It's a popular question because it will have a really big effect on what else the Rockets do. We look at Amin Thompson. He's expected to get a max deal next summer when he's extension eligible. Jabari Smith got a deal done as well. And then that's going to matter for Kevin Durant. I thought this was really interesting that cap folks around the NBA believe that Kevin Durant, you're going to need to be below 120 million maximum that Durant is eligible for over a 2-year deal. That's what we would see for him. And the number they ultimately landed on was Durant, in order to give the Rockets the flexibility they need to keep some of these guys, needs to take 80 million over 2 years, 40 million per year. Right now, Durant is making $54 million this season. So this is going to be something to keep an eye on as well. Some of these guys that we said won't get deals or it's looking unlikely. Who knows? Maybe in the 11th hour, they get something done on Monday with their teams. And we see some of these actually come through with extensions. It's always possible. It has happened. But Kevin Durant at almost 55 million, if the Rockets extend Tari Eason and that number comes in high, that's going to flip. And then we're going to have to hear a lower extension on Kevin Durant. And if you're KD, should you be willing to take that big of a pay cut?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would, if I'm KD, be more willing to, because I would look at this and say, man, this is a really talented young team. I can kind of fade into being like the third option a couple of years from now, and they'd still be a title contender. I've just got to make it easier for them to build out the rest of the roster around me. And I'm in a pretty good spot here. Can't imagine he wants to be a journeyman anymore in his late 30s. But maybe he doesn't feel like he should do that, right? We've seen players also take the opposite stance where they're like, well, I'm still so good. Why would I not?
And
right?
he is.
And he is, right? And also you look at it too, like, yeah, I've played the game for a while, certainly far longer than the average player does, but it's coming to an end soon. So maybe I want to get as much as I can for the last couple of years, right? But that's something they will have to absolutely cross as a crossroad. You would have to imagine that they would have known something like this before even trading for him, that like this is certainly a possibility.
And I'm sure they probably had that conversation with him too.
Yeah.
Donnie, let me ask you this. Is Kevin Durant worth a max contract in today's NBA?
I think skill set wise, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
My only concern would be age and health.
Sure.
He's been mostly healthy, like over the last couple of years, of course. But you do have to pace him at 37. So there's that too.
But we've been talking about these mid-tier guys, these guys who are, maybe all-star adjacent. Maybe these guys that we're talking about the Jaden Ivies of the way, at some point, could he make an all-star team or something? Sure. But is he going to be a perennial year in, year out lock all-star? Probably not. But again, we'll see how his career develops. I'm a fan of his game, but these types of players, the Brandon Ingrams of the world, the Pelicans didn't want to pay him on his next contract. Anyway, these guys have gotten squeezed a bit in this market with restricted free agency. The max guys are still the max guys. They're automatic, the Lukas, the Giannis's, the Jokic's of the right. They're automatically, here's your max money. We're happy to pay it to you. There it is. I do wonder if we see the aging veterans squeezed a little bit as well in situations like this. Hey, you want to have the depth? You might need to take a little bit off. And could Kevin Durant set the precedent there? And then what could that potentially mean for LeBron James, who will be a free agent next summer as well?
Oh, I don't think there's any chance LeBron's getting a max next summer. I don't. From
he was
anybody.
Second team All NBA last season.
And it's not because of that. It's just that he's freaking 41. I just don't think that's happening. Like he could be second team All NBA again this year, and I don't think there's any chance he's getting a max offer anywhere.
But is he a max level talent?
For sure. And that's where it's kind of a little bit murky, because I think somewhere in all of that is also just about upside. And unfortunately, we're at the end of the rope with some of the older guys. So that's the problem too. I think, like I said earlier, you have to pace these older guys, things like that. You want to maybe take less off their plate as opposed to pay them more ideally and put more on their plate as a result, because that's a lot of money to invest, right? But again, absolutely still the quality of player, still really, really good, even if they've lost a step or two, whatever it is. They're still among the best players in the NBA. And so by default should be considered before guys that are lower in the totem pole that haven't reached to the same height or level of player yet. So I can understand that. But I think a lot of it also is just on pure upside. You're paying some of these guys for what they can do, what they can potentially lead your team to be able to do over the span of that contract as well. So I don't think any of these guys are getting maxes. KD may be the guy that sets the precedent. Maybe it's LeBron next summer if he decides to continue playing another year or two, whatever. But I mean, there's not a lot of max caliber aging guys anyway. It's like it's these two, Steph, maybe Kawhi, and then you have other guys like Harden. But I'm not giving really, Harden a max either. Like there's not a lot of these guys left, but maybe they would have to take more steep pay cuts as opposed to in that 30 to 40. Maybe they've got to dip into the 20s at some point, but that's a really hard thing to ask a Steph, LeBron, a KD. Like it's really hard.
I think Kawhi should be willing to take like a
stop
like a $48 million pay cut.
I shouldn't even brought up Kawhi. Stop. But there's not a lot of those guys. A lot of those guys that are in that same like peer group are guys like Russ, DeRozan. Like these guys are not on max deals anymore. So it is what it is.
But a lot of, like, when we talk about like Russ, he's not producing on a max level either. And so for the guys who are producing, but it's going to be an interesting thing to watch how this all plays out as teams are being more cap conscious around the NBA. Again, we're seeing restricted free agency being more weaponized than we've seen perhaps in the past for teams. It's always been a tough spot to be in for players, but it is insanely difficult to be in now. You're not getting those offers if you're an RFA. And now we're looking at the other end with KD. Might he have to take a 20% pay cut, 20+%, and take $40 million a season with
fine.
The Rockets?
They'll just pay him. When they'll have to have him.
He'll plant some trees.
No, he's not planting
Is
trees.
That what
he's gonna do something else. He's gonna, I don't know. He's gonna build a school somewhere or something. And they're gonna do that annually, and he'll get that money. I don't know what it is. They're gonna find something.
He'll find a way to funnel that money. Well, yeah, I mean, hey, if the NBA doesn't bring down the hammer, why not just start funneling money through third parties and all that?
A bunch of what is it? KD, what 7? Whatever his number is?
KD Aspire 7. What was it? KL2 Aspire. KD 7 Aspire.
That's what we're gonna do. No, he's 35. I'm tripping. KD 35 Aspire.
35.
That's what we're getting. That's what they'll start doing for these older guys. Don't worry, we're good. It'll work out one way or another.
It's it's an interesting and very shifting dynamic through the NBA when you look at the way these contracts are playing out. Will Kevin Durant take less in order for the Rockets to give more to the Tari Easons of the world? What will that ultimately look like, knowing that a max salary is coming for Amin Thompson? They've already got Alperen Sengun on a big deal. But I'll tell you the bottom line. Like, look at Sengun's deal. Could he be a max level player? Yes. I think he could be. I think you can argue he is. So when you look at his contract, what the Rockets effectively have is there is upside to it, right? The true max level guys, they're going to provide actually more value than their max contract. If you can give Giannis a max contract, you give it to him all day, every day, and you're going to get more bang for your buck than even what a max contract pays him. That's really the sub-max guys. That's really what you need to make sure you have, is upside potential to mitigate the downside risk, because every contract has downside risk. Paul George broke his leg, right? Are you getting bang for your buck on that contract? No. There's always the possibility that he could get hurt, that a player could get hurt, and then you're not getting. Now we could talk insurance covers it and all that kind of stuff, but the bottom line is you're not getting your return on that. If you pay a player based on what their ceiling is, all you really have is you're either going to get even value or less than. There's going to be downside, right? What you want is to have that upside. And for some guys, a max contract just isn't that. Kevin Durant at $40 million, could he perform like a max level player? Yes, he absolutely could. And that gives you the ability to actually have a positive value contract. I think that's something that teams are having to be more conscious of, not just what's our downside risk here, but what's our chance that we actually have upside, that we actually have even better value than what we're paying for out of this player. And it's something I think teams have to be more aggressive in making sure that they get, and they are starting to be that.
Yeah, I think the Rockets have done a great job with managing their books. So I'd have to imagine, like I mentioned earlier, they probably discussed this with them, because this is something that you can forecast and you could see it coming, that Katie's going to need money. Thompson's going to need money. There's no way to make it work otherwise. So I'd have to imagine that he's probably playing ball with them. And ultimately, he's made so much money in his career. $40 million is still an insane amount of money. Like, I think he should mostly be okay with that. I can understand why maybe you wouldn't want that, given where you've been, but I think he should mostly be okay with that. And especially if it means that he doesn't have to be a journeyman anymore. He could, fade into the background a little bit as he ages and just play on a young team that comes into their own during this tenure. I think that'd be great for him. I more so have questions about the other older guys. Like, I don't think, for example, unless LeBron takes a steep pay cut, I don't know that he has the same exact luxury in LA. I don't know where else he would go otherwise. I mean, he's got a great luxury in LA if he wants to. He could play behind Luka for a couple of years. That's probably one of the best things you could do. Like, just, to help your ceiling in terms of like potentially winning more and more. But I don't know if it's exactly the same if you were to try to go elsewhere, if he would get in a great situation like I think KD is in, and some of the other older guys as well. Like, I think they're going to get squeezed. But like we mentioned earlier, I think it's just a squeeze across the board. Like, it truly is free agency. These max salaries also, if you're not truly genuinely worth a max, they don't want to give it to you. They also really don't want to pay out these $20 to $35 million deals, because it's kind of hard to build out the rest of your roster. And if you're a max level guy, they've got to be certain you're a max guy, because they can't have too many of those either on the books. There's just so many different layers to it that it makes it really tricky for, I think, a lot of guys. Like, we were talking about Lauri Markkanen the other day, but he makes like $40-something million. That's kind of hard, right? Like, so I think that this is something that the new CBA has maybe caused a lot of drama in relation to all this, for lack of a better term. But I think that with the trend that we're on, I think maybe this could be a good thing overall, like the way that this potentially, like, teams adjust to this and the way this looks. But my only real problem with all of this is that the salaries also continue to go up. And so the cap is going up, the salaries are going up, but players just are going to want more and more money as some of their peers are getting more. So like last time, guys were looking at guys like Quickly, and his salary and Hero and things like that. So what's the bar going to be a couple of years from now? Are they going to be looking at Giddey? Like what are we looking at
I mean, the cap going up, though, just means that the league is making more money. So there's more money available for everybody. In terms of players getting more, though, I think
But it's more the max guys that absorb that, though. That's the problem.
We're seeing teams be more strategic about where they place that money now.
So the other middle guys are still getting squeezed, but I think the max guys will just keep pushing deeper into the 70 millions. So
we're gonna Donnie, I don't know exactly when, but in fact I may be able to find it, but we're gonna see $100 million average annual
it's coming. Somebody's already got like a crazy annual overall contract, like $400 million deal, something like that, something stupid overall for their contract.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Jaylen Brown signed a big contract. We saw, I forget who has the biggest one right now.
Got a crazy like extension on his deals as well. Something crazy like that, where he got like 150 over 2 years or something like that. I don't know.
All right, but the projection right now is for the 35% max in year one of that deal to come in at $74 million in 2030. So we're on the road to $100 million per year deal.
We'll see it, but we're like what, 20 years out?
Maybe. I mean, let me give you an idea, Donnie. The 35% max this season is at $54 million.
Oh, we're not that.
We're talking 2030. It's going to be $74 million.
Okay, never mind. I said 20. We may be 10 years out at best.
Right. It's moving up.
Oh yeah, no. That's crazy. You're right. I totally forgot it's already 54 because it wasn't that long ago. The max salary was like $30 million. It was not. This is like a decade ago. It's not that long ago. So
the NBA, again, the league is growing, but you know what? I mean, why shouldn't the players? If the league's making more money, why shouldn't the players make more money? Right? Like that's.
Yeah. But the problem is that they've got the stupid aprons, so you can make as much money as you want. It just makes it harder to build the teams.
I mean, it's more restrictive, and that's just they don't want teams to be able to just say, well, forget it. I'll pay the luxury tax fines, and I'm gonna have a $500 million roster.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Steve. Bomber. They don't want anybody to do that. Well, that's also frankly directed at the Warriors too. And they're spending. The Celtics, to agree, when they put their team together, they are very expensive. They to the point where they had to deconstruct a decent chunk of their roster. When we talk about Drew Holiday and Porzingis, in order to free up some of that space because of the apron system. It is trying to stop teams from just spending their way to wins and trying to force teams to be strategic and even the playing field to a degree.
Yeah, that's why I was saying like it could maybe be a good thing down the road. Remains to be seen, but I know everyone kind of hates it now, though.
Yeah, it's a difficult adjustment. That's for sure. All right, everybody. Let us know your thoughts on these players not getting extensions, teams using restricted free agency in this way as a way to get rid of any fear that they have of a player actually hitting free agency. They just use restricted free agency and say, hey, if you want to sign a team-friendly deal now, great. If not, it's restricted free agency for you, and we're not going to be worried about that. Let us know your thoughts on that situation. Plus, KD, should he be willing to take $40 million per year so the Rockets can keep players like Tari Eason around and give him more than $20 million? Again, give us your thoughts in the comment section down below. Appreciate all of you for joining. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.